Welcome everybody to KC Grid Talk, powered by shopakr.com. Episode number 12. We're getting set to preview the King of the Castle. My name is Emory, back here again for another week of the show, and I'm joined as always, albeit in slightly different conditions this week, by Kaleb Vieska. Kaleb, we were
Yeah,
in Charlotte together earlier today.
correct.
You're currently about 3 hours up the road, I believe, in the mountains somewhere. So, how's RV life treating you? Should we wait for Caleb to unmute his mic?
Well, sorry about that. Well, we're here in the RV. The one and only Xander Clements is at the helm right now, driving us to Castle Motorsports Park, and I am, I guess, in the back doing this episode right now. But yeah, we flew into North Carolina earlier today. Picked up our RV with the Get Pride trailer with all the merch and all of our equipment as well for the weekend. So picked that up. Me and Emory ran some rentals earlier today, which was pretty fun, going wheel to wheel around that track that we were at just 2 weeks ago. And yeah, already headed to Castle Motorsports Park, and we'll be there tomorrow morning. So should be all righty. We'll be there. We'll be there tomorrow morning, and getting ready to set up for what's going to be a good weekend of racing.
Yeah, Caleb did pretty good for his first time in rentals at Trackhouse. Within a second and a half, we had some fun today, but it was definitely good to catch up before the game gets going up in Newcastle. Again, in the mountains right now, Xander's doing more important things such as driving the actual RV while Caleb yaps in the back. So
Correct.
that's always a good thing. So they'll get up there hopefully sometime in the next few hours and get set to go. But on the other hand, one other guy who is also not in a normal location, we've got Alexander Searle somewhere in the middle of Tampa. Tell us about how that came about.
Well, my buddy and I, we had some tickets to Busch Gardens, and we said, you know what, let's go to Tampa. Let's do a little day trip. 2 days actually. We drove yesterday, spent the night, and went to Busch Gardens again today because we have annual passes there. So decided to spend the day doing some fun roller coaster things, and now I am in the middle of somewhere in Tampa. Bringing you guys this podcast. If it ever gets too noisy, I apologize, and please let me know, guys. But I decided to give you guys a different background today.
Yeah, very vibey, I must say. I think that might be the back of a food truck or something, if I'm correct.
I think it's like an acai food truck.
Yeah, pretty solid. Really fits the Florida vibe. So
I'm
uh,
trying.
we're we're off on the right track so far. Alex is in Florida, but this weekend, as we're talking about with Caleb, we're going up to Newcastle for the second round of the Stars Championship Series. Myself and Caleb will be working. Caleb will be on the mic as he's been a lot of this year. I'll be behind the computer looking to switch this weekend. Alex, unfortunately, not with us this weekend, but he'll be here to preview everything and get set all the way up until the actual racing starts. So getting set to go forward round number 2. Again, 287 entries this weekend for King of the Castle. It's, I believe, the largest Stars event that we've had so far on record. And King of the Castle, one of the main headline events that Stars has had in recent years. We saw them in 2021, 2022, 2023. All of those races having quite a lot of entries. So without further ado, a look at the schedule for the weekend. Again, week number 2 of the Stars Pro Show. They did some tweaks to the practice rounds as well as the heat format for the pro side of things. So now practice will be integrated throughout the day, and the Moto 1 and Moto 2 will also be ran throughout the day on Saturday. But Sunday, the same line of show that we saw from earlier this year in Charlotte. It will be the normal finals, the main event starting out, and then the OKN final and the Pro Shifter final. The full-on pro show. We'll have a lot of great coverage for that coming to you on Sunday. But again, Newcastle Motorsports Park, the home of King of the Castle. We've seen some great racing there in the last 3 years for Stars. I mean, it's kind of where the Stars Championship Series, the in-person events started out for them. It's also a track that has been host to close battles, whether it be in KA 2 years ago with Connor Ferris and the Bailiff brothers, whether it be in OKN last year with Aiden Fox getting a huge victory, or whether it be in Shifter as well, where we've seen some great battling, the likes of Talanyako, Annie Rule, Josh Conker going for it at the top level in Stars on the Shifter side of things. But before we get into that, one other thing to keep track of is one of the things that makes this track really great, in my opinion, is the stars layout for the Newcastle Motorsports Park. It's something that got debuted by them in 2020. We've seen other series run it, so it's not exactly a completely unique layout. We see that they have the reverse layout into turn number one. You can see that is going into the I-70 corner. As people that are familiar with Newcastle will know, you go up through turns number 2 and 3 into the shark fin corner. Out of that, up through a quick 90-degree left-hander up to the hairpin, the scoreboard hairpin in reverse, as they call it, and then you go up through a kink, up through green corner, down through another kink, and then up towards the cell tower hairpin, which again, in reverse, a really fast corner. They're going to have a very short braking zone, and it kind of comes at you extremely fast. And you go through double lefts in reverse. You go up through the right-hand corner, that will be the blue corner, down the back straight into the 90-degree scale tower corner, and then another set of 90s, and then the final corner, which would be turn one in the normal forward direction, is now a very fast last corner. So, Kaleb, we were here at this event last year. You saw the layout. It's been one that has been generating a lot of positive reviews from drivers over the years. What are your takeaways from it when you get set to look at the racing on this track?
Yeah, I mean, we're used to seeing a lot of shifters around this place, and we know what to expect whenever we think about shifter. But one of the big talking points last year in the OKN class is there wasn't too much speed on the main straightaway, right, with the OKN packages. So it was a little hard to pass into turn number what's going to be. It's the long straightaway on the left-hand side, and then you get to that hairpin corner back there. So we saw it. It was a little bit difficult to pass for some drivers in the OKN class, and we're probably going to be used to seeing that this weekend too. And the draft is going to have a lot to do and a lot to play here this weekend. So, I mean, that's definitely one of the things that we're going to have to take away from it. I haven't driven Newcastle this clockwise. I drove it counterclockwise, obviously, at the CKNA Grand Nationals last year, and I mean it's a very, very cool track, and with a lot of grip. So we'll probably see a lot of grip get built into this track as the weekend progresses.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about that, I did have the chance to run that layout. At this point, I've driven it 3 times, I believe, and I have really enjoyed driving. I think it produces it's a really fun lap. I think the racing can get a little bit chaotic at times, especially in the slower categories like a KA engine package. But I mean, certainly it produces a good challenge. I had a lot of fun, specifically at Stars last year, driving that layout. And like you mentioned, the OKN category, especially with the struggles that they have in the slower speed corners, I think this layout kind of makes it to where the field spread is a little bit wider. The passing differential is harder to stay right on someone's bumper in OKN. It's even harder to make a pass, especially when you really have the one deep braking zone into turn one, and then the exit is so hard to get right in an OKN. So I think the racing is going to be interesting to watch in OKN. For shifter, it's a wide track, it's a fast track. I think the heavy braking zones combined with a few fast flowing corners make it an exciting track to watch in shifter. But I'm a big fan of this one. Alex, you've driven this track a few times. You've also worked with this exact layout last year. I mean, what do you think about it?
I think it's one of my favorite layouts that Newcastle provides. Like Kaleb mentioned with the OKN package, it's going to be really important to get set up right and get the gearing right, because obviously with the limiter, you see a lot of guys, struggle to make and, hook a nose and then have a straightaway to make a move. So it's going to come down to really setting up onto that front straightaway, getting a run through the corners. You're going to see a lot of dive bomb passes through the hairpins for sure. I think something that we haven't talked about. It's not a huge thing let's talk about in karting, but it still is an effect. I think aero wash plays a factor here slightly through turn one with the hairpin. It's really hard to get your nose in there behind if you're right behind somebody without getting a little bit of front end push. Also from the last couple of corners with it being fast, quick lift 90-degree corners, you're going to see some drivers start to get some understeer if they're behind drivers for too long. So I think you're going to see a lot of passing. I think it invites it. I think Newcastle is one of the best tracks that we go to in terms of how many passing opportunities that there are around this place. So for sure, exciting racing action that's going to come our way in all classes, but especially OKN and toe shifting.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you kind of mentioned the aero wash. It's something that I think comes into play more at Newcastle than just about any other track that we go to. The 90-degree corners in particular, the last 3 corners, I even felt it in KA a little bit when you start to run really right up behind someone into those last 3 corners, and you see if you're running the exact line, it's not a significant in a KA, it's just barely. But I definitely think the faster you go in an X30 in particular, and then an OKN as well this weekend, when you start really pushing the cart through those corners and you have someone right in front of you, it can take the air off the front nose a little bit and just induce a little bit of a push. So I think that's something to watch. I also think in general that those last three corners are so critical because it all feeds into the momentum that you see on the main straightaway. So I think that we're going to see some good racing. I think that the last three corners are really challenging to get right because the rest of the track is kind of a slow speed, fast speed dynamic. But that last three corners being or last four corners really being as fast as they are, you really never get a chance to regain the momentum if you get all flying and mess up one of them. So I think it'll be fun to watch. But another thing, as we get into the more class specific focus, is the OKN side of things. And we have 17 on the entry list, a lot of the same faces that we saw from round one in Charlotte. Defending winner Paulie Massimino comes into the race with the narrowest of points lead over Diego Ramos. Diego's also running. Kaleb Gafera mentioned he was a little bit uncertain about running the second round when we talked to him in Charlotte, but he's decided to come on and run in Newcastle. So a lot of the main faces from round one, we have Nick Terlecki obviously back after coming also close to first national victory in the OKN senior or OKN pro side of things in Charlotte. So a lot of the same faces. Peyton Phillips, your round one pole sitter, is back. Defending champion Brandon Carr, defending race winner Aiden Fox, all here in the field. So Kaleb, I mean, it's not really a field that's heavy in numbers per se with only 17, but you would say the quality certainly seems to be there and a lot of storylines to watch in this one.
Yeah, a lot of big ones coming into this weekend, right? I mean, when we look back at round number one at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, one of the big questions that I was asking myself and that a lot of us were asking ourselves, especially me and Xander being in the booth that weekend, were the Fox and Son team of how off the pace and the mechanical issues that they were plagued with almost all weekend long that time out. So we were just kind of surprised, to see a driver like Aiden Fox, who was up there in the field all last year, just falling back, and as well with the rest of the Fox and Son team, right? So, he has a lot of momentum. Won here last year. He was the king of the castle in OKN Stars. So he's definitely, one of the favorites this weekend, and with a lot of pressure on his back, right? Because they need to get the result. They didn't have it at all in the first round, and they really need to pull something out of the bag this time out here at Newcastle Motorsports Park. When you look at Paulie Massimino as well, they're unsure with Paulie coaching, and round one worked out for them, but round number two, the schedule just makes it a little bit more difficult. And Paulie, when we spoke to him this morning, Emory, and he was saying that he was thinking about running while we were there at Trackhouse this morning, but. A lot of, like you said, there's not too many numbers in this OKN Stars class, but the quality is definitely there, right? You have Brandon Carr. Peyton Phillips makes his return after having such a great run in his opening round in that OKN class, and he looks to do the same thing for the Ryan Perry Motorsports team. That package was absolutely on rails all weekend long until that final, right? I think, speaking of Peyton TSRS, after that, after round number one, he said that the spark plug just completely snapped off, or it was something around that. And it was just, super unfortunate and super unlucky for a guy like Peyton Phillips, who had a lot of pace that weekend. But again, I mean, Brandon Carr looking for redemption. The reigning champion wants to keep the number one plate up there. And Kaleb Gafera, who actually worked for us whenever we were at Trackhouse Motorplex for the United States Pro Kart Series. And he actually told us that he was running the rest of the season, and his privateer group, just himself, one man 10. I believe he pitted with Hayden Jones at the first round, but Kaleb Gafera looks set for a full season at the Stars Championship Series. So that's pretty cool to see, and he had a very, very good points haul round number one. Obviously some mechanical issues and a little bit of learning as well, but the young gun looks pretty good coming into this second round at Newcastle.
Yeah, and Gafera was certainly on the pace all weekend long. I don't think pace was ever really the issue. Track position in the final kind of kept him from that. But it's nice to see him and his dad, I believe Greg Bell, helping out some with that operation as well, bringing it to the OKM package and coming back for what looks to be a full season run with Kaleb. I mean, it was exciting to have him behind the camera for us a couple weeks ago in Mooresville, but I think it's even more exciting to see him on the national side of things as he kind of blends in the karting schedule with what he's doing on the car side of things, both open wheel and closed wheel as well. So Gafera is a story to watch. You mentioned Aiden Fox earlier. One thing that I think is interesting to note is the amount of guys that have experience around this layout. And when I was looking down the up and down the entry list, Fox has a lot of experience through Route 66 as well as pretty much every year of Stars. We saw Brendan Carr run this layout last year. We saw Paulie ran it at USPCAS in 2021. But one guy that I don't believe has any real experience on this layout is Peyton Phillips. And I think that is something that kind of came to my attention when I was looking. I believe he's run the reverse layout for USPCAS at some point, or not for SCUSA during the Pro Tour at some point, running the reverse layout. But I don't think he's ever run the reverse layout with the shark fins. There's minor differences there, but I think that kind of the familiarity at Newcastle tends to favor some of the Midwest guys. I think that's a little bit of why Aiden Fox was able to be so good last year. I mean, he's certainly a very talented driver in his own right, but I think that the track experience, the amount of exposure and seat time he's had at that track kind of gives that slight edge that you need to be able to come out on top in an OKN side of things. Alex, I mean, we talked about the OK infield. Kaleb mentioned a lot of names there. Is there anyone else that really sticks out to you as possible contenders for this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned majority, right? You said it best. There's not a whole lot of entries, but I think the biggest thing is went to Charlotte. Not many drivers have been there, so it created an advantage for the few that had been there. You saw it in the practice sessions, you saw it in the qualifying sessions. A little bit less in the races because everyone got used to the racetrack at that point. But at the end of the day, it was Kaleb out front, it was Paulie out front. Diego did a great job, very impressive on his first time on the OKN package. So I think we're going to see more of the same. I think you mentioned it, right? Aiden Fox struggled in Charlotte. Not really to anything he's doing. It's just they struggled with motor problems all weekend long. I would bet they're not going to come back and do that again. I bet you for sure they did their homework. So I would love to see, the Fox and Sun crew back up front, where they belong. King of the Castle, potentially part 2 for Aiden Fox. He did it last year. So let's see what he can do. I think Diego Ramos is going to be the one to watch. This is a track that he has been very fast at his entire career. We saw it at USPCAS last year. He's been quick at the Pro Tour. I mean, this is a track that he is just notoriously very fast at. And so it would not surprise me one bit if Diego Ramos arrives and that's the driver that everybody's chasing. I think Paulie's been very fast here. Kaleb is a very fast driver around this place as well. So those are 3 that I think are going to be very quick. Aiden Fox won the race last year. Brandon Carr's struggled a bit last year, if you remember correctly. I mean, he was there, but off the pace compared to what Aiden Fox did where he walked in the final. So Brandon Carr is going to have to go back to the drawing board, I think, compared to what they did last year. But obviously the pace was there. But I think on board that Trinity karting, Car Public, he didn't look incredibly quick at Charlotte. So for sure, he's going to have to go back to the drawing board slightly in terms of here in Newcastle. But I think we're in for a great race all throughout. I mean, we already mentioned most of the names, but for me, the one that I'm looking out for is Diego Ramos.
Yeah, and I think, again, you mentioned a lot of the guys that I think will be very much up in the fray of things at Newcastle. So another guy that I think is important to watch here, and then Kaleb, I'll get back to you in just a second.
Yeah.
Is Wes Gundler, because he had a really good run at the Rotax Nationals last year in the final, the U.S. Trophy final at Newcastle, and it was a reverse layout, so they did not have the shark fin, but they did have the reverse turn 1, reverse turn 2, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty similar in nature to what you will see on the Stars layout, and he was rapid aboard his Fox and Sun machine. So I think in general, the whole team seems to understand this place really well, but Wes Gundler is a name that I look out for. I mean, he had a lot of pace in Charlotte, kind of got caught up in some scuffles, got in a turn 1 incident, similar to what we saw from Brendan Carr, I believe, in one of the heat races. I think that limited his finish, but I expect Wes Gundler to have a pretty good race here as well. Kaleb?
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny how Alex said that Brandon struggled. He did struggle, but he still put it on the podium at the end of the weekend. So he'll definitely be one of the ones to watch this weekend, as well as Diego, who a lot of people don't know, but he has a lot of second places at Newcastle Motorsports Park, right? Just always looking for that win in Indiana and just falling so short. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys said it best, and it's definitely anybody's game coming into Newcastle, a track that a lot of people, know a little bit more than what they did going into Charlotte. Because if we remember back to Charlotte, only like 5 guys in the field actually had laps around the place, and that was mostly in 206 with the CKNA Spring Nationals. So it's a big difference whenever you're going a little faster. around the Charlotte Motor Speedway. But yeah, a very even playing field, but I like Emory said, I think the field spread will be a little bit bigger with how difficult it may be to pass around here.
Yeah, not just again how difficult it is to pass, but also the amount of different setup options you have at Newcastle is greater than what you would have at a place like Charlotte. I think that there's more the easiest way to describe it is there's more corners, more chances for discrepancies when it comes to driving and difference in the setup and speed. And the other thing, though, is there's so many slow speed corners, but it's also a very long straight. And so you can't really gear it too high, especially in the OKN with a rev limiter that you got to be careful to stay away from. And then on the flip side, on the gearing too low, there's just so many slow speed corners that you have to be careful not to miss the mark on gearing. So I think that we're going to see a lot of differences when it comes to setup, or at least more differences than we saw in Charlotte, where there's a lot of mid speed corners. And I think who that plays into, I think it kind of depends on what each team can find from a setup standpoint, what each team has in their notebook when it comes to engine setup and stuff along that sorts. But for me, this Newcastle track, it's full of surprises. A lot of guys like it. I think Diego, like you mentioned, Kel, a lot of second places around this place. He has been absolutely rapid. I think he's actually a little bit quicker going forward compared to what we saw from him going reverse on the Scusa side of things. But still, I mean, we have enough knowledge of Diego Ramos to know that he's going to be quick no matter which layout it is. Kaleb Gafera returns to the site that he had one of his most famous runs in junior for Allison Performance Group, going from 28th almost to the podium back in 2022. And then through the rest of the grid, another guy with a lot of experience at Newcastle is Paulie Massimino. Nick Terlecki's had a really good run of form at Newcastle in the past, specifically at this layout at Route 66. And further down the list as well, you get through, like you mentioned, Brandon Carr, maybe not quite on the pace last year, but at USPKS, he had a lot of pace. And at this race, even he still found his way onto the podium. So a lot of storylines for OKN. But as we get towards the end of the segment, we'll talk later about our bold predictions for the weekend, which may or may not include some predictions on the OKN field. So 17 drivers again, a lot of fast names. We got the winner from round one, the entire podium from round one, the pole sitter from round one, and all of your key contributors to the championship last year, including Henry Wheeler, who we have not mentioned yet, back again after he was rapid here last year as well. So another name that could be worth mentioning. So a lot of storylines in OKN, but when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about arguably the biggest storyline from round number one. It's the shifter category and seeing if Jay Irwin can go back to back alongside his teammate Ian Quinn and the rest of your 23 kart shifter field. Coming up next here on Grid Talk.
Brandon, why are there all these charges for just over $200 from Acceleration Kart Racing's website?
That's because AKR gives you free shipping on orders of $200 or more within the continental US.
Okay, but I thought you were just getting a pair of gloves. That's what, 70 bucks?
But if I'm getting a new pair of gloves, I might as well get a new pair of shoes to match. And then on top of that, I'll get a neck brace because with the shipping, it's basically free.
Yeah, I do not think the math checks out on that.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free for orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Spend responsibly. Shop AKR.com.
Welcome back to KC Grid Talk, powered by ShopAKR.com. We've just finished our preview of the OKN category. Now, as night falls in the KC RV and Kaleb Vieska gets set more into darkness and Alexander Searle starting to get dark on his own side of things, let's talk about shifter, because that was kind of some dark magic being used by Jay Irwin there. Almost a 10-second gap in round number one. Now as he heads into Newcastle, a track that he's been to before, a track that I think he's probably still among the least experienced at compared to a lot of the other guys. It's a new challenge for him, but man, I mean, that round one pace looked sensational, Alex. I mean, what do you think the mindset is for Jay heading into this weekend?
Repeat. I mean, I think we talked to Jay actually after the race, and I thought it was so funny. We had him on the show afterwards, right? And it was Jay said that he thought that I was crazy for picking him. I didn't think I was crazy, but Jay and his dad thought I was crazy. And from the moment that the green flag waved on practice number one, the pace was there for Jay. And I expect more of the same here in Newcastle. track that he's actually been to before. So he knows what he can do at a track he's actually familiar with. I think Ian Quinn is going to be incredibly impressive too. I think he was quick at Charlotte because he has a lot of experience there. But what impressed me with Ian Quinn was when everybody figured it out, he got faster as well. It wasn't just because this is a track that he knows. So I think Ian Quinn at another track that he has many laps around, his teammate, I think the Burrell guys might be the team to beat. A lot of drivers to look at here. I mean, I think the storyline for Shifter is going to be Chase Jones. This is not his first time in a Shifter, but his first time doing a Stars Shifter race. Hasn't been a Shifter in a bit. So for Chase Jones on board the MPG there, I think he's going to have a bit of a learning curve, but I'll get into my bold predictions a little bit later. But I think Chase Jones will be very, very fast. Josh Conker had I would say a worrisome weekend at Charlotte because the pace was there throughout practice and even in qualifying. He was, thereabouts, a couple of tenths off in qualifying. But in the races, he struggled for pace and I think got into it with a couple of drivers. So for Josh, it's going to be a rebound weekend for him. Down the order, Billy Musgrave as well. He was there, struggled again, race pace wise. So I think the biggest thing is a lot of these KZ drivers back to the drawing board after Charlotte, figuring out how they can make their tires last with the pro show format. I think race pace was a big issue. We saw Jay Irwin, masterful. I think what's so impressive with Jay was not only his one lap pace, but the fact that, when you thought he lit up the tires in the opening, laps of that final, he had more pace. To walk to the field by over 10 seconds in a KZ race is unheard of. And he did it with ease. And I think he had more tire left in the tank. So for Jay, I think it's just going to be do more of what you did in Charlotte. Keep smooth. Don't get too much in your head. For AJ Myers, another driver that we, I haven't talked about yet, but obviously everybody knows the Magic Man himself. And I think he's going to be another driver everyone has their eyes on because for the majority of that Charlotte weekend, we look to have maybe just a little bit over Jay, but in the race, again, race pace is probably going to be the name of the game for me at least. That's what AJ's going to have to go back and look at, where they went wrong in the final.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Josh Conker and Billy Musgrave, and for me, both of them really they had the kind of dueling incidents in the final of Billy Musgrave retiring with a mechanical issue, and then you pan over and there's Josh Conker on the side of the road as well after contact in the main event. So unfortunate for both of them. I think we'll see both of them make a rebound this weekend. But certainly, you got to start all discussions with Jay Irwin because he was as quick as anyone when it came down to round number 1 of the championship. P1 in the final. He really had the pace in both of the heats, just did not quite get his way all the way up through the field on the second one, ended up second. But I think Jay Irwin, as dominant as he was in the first round, it's hard to really bet against him being in the discussion. You mentioned Ian Quinn was really impressive in the last round. He's got a lot of experience around this track as well, in just about every single type of category possible. So I think that kind of plays into Ian's role. And then you get down through the rest of the guys. AJ Myers, of course, anywhere you go, AJ's probably got a good amount of experience, but especially this track with how much running has been done on the national scene in recent years, you can expect AJ Myers to be up at the front. Michael Riccio, to me, this is kind of where I started to see Riccio pick it up last year, was around this time of the King of the Castle. It was round 2 of the championship last season. It's round 2 this season as well. For me, that race kind of led towards him working towards the Cincinnati part of the schedule where he did really well. And I think Riccio is another name that did well in round 1 in Charlotte, but we'll be looking for a little bit more. And then another guy that I think you cannot ignore here, and someone that we've seen run up at the front of the field, is Talon Yockel. And that was what, for me, that was his shifter debut, I believe, in 2022, was at King of the Castle. Immediately was a top 3 threat there, ran up towards the front of the field, did not quite have the final result for that. Last year, Newcastle, one of the few places that he was really able to take the fight and beat AJ Myers head to head in some sessions. And I think this was another, like Riccio last year was kind of the sign of him catching up and being really up at the front of the field. I think for Yockel, it was an age of maturity to be able to see him run all the way up at the front of the field at Newcastle. And so after a little bit of a difficult round 1 in Charlotte, I expect to see Yockel at the front of the field aboard his number 1 plate, driving the Sodi machine. And Kaleb, we get into the shifter guys. There's a lot of other guys as well. 22 carts this weekend.
Correct.
It's definitely a stacked field. Who else are you keeping your eye on as we get set to go for what looks to be another promising round of action here in shifter?
Yeah, whenever we talk about this class, you like you guys always mentioned, you have to start with obviously Jay Irwin, who's been super quick, but also here on the entry list, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Noah Zarsk also running in the 2:23. He's usually a driver that I'm used to seeing out in Texas, and always racing in the top 3 whenever we get into the Texas Racing Series. So going to be looking for him, see what he can do against the likes of so many decorated drivers like AJ Myers and Billy Musgrave. So it's a big class, and we also can't fail to mention, right? MPG part owner Chase Jones racing shifter this weekend, racing in the pro category. So pretty cool to see Chase, getting back in the seat and racing in a kart again, but doing it in shifter. So definitely something to look out for here this weekend, and seeing what Chase can do. He's definitely going to want to show his younger drivers that he too can drive and do it at the fastest speed, and what other place to do it than the Stars Championship Series and in the Pro Show. So Chase Jones definitely one of the drivers to watch. But I mean, you guys said it perfectly, right? A lot of drivers looking for more this weekend. I feel like Talon felt like he would have had a really good start to his year on the Sodi kart. Wasn't the best start, for his standards. Was running a little bit in the mid pack and wanted to be further up there, cracking into the top 5, as well as Riccio, who had a very, very strong end to his year last year, taking the win at the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati. And, he's definitely going to want a little bit more this year, right? He ended last year on a high note. He was in the main event, lapping almost as quick and fighting with the likes of all the European drivers at the Super Nationals, and then coming into this race. And this year hasn't been the start that he would have wanted as well, but just looking for a little bit more as well. So, all these drivers definitely going to be pushing to put themselves in the championship fight. But, one of the things that I feel like surprised all of us a little bit was the depth in the field of how big it was and how close the racing was. Every single moto, from Moto 1, Moto 2, and then the main event, obviously we saw a little bit of a pull away from the 2 Burrell Art machines. And when you look back at that race for AJ Myers, it just seems like they were struggling for grip for the first 5 laps of that race, and then was able to build up and able to maintain that speed all the way through. So just something to look out for here this weekend whenever we get down to it. But I mean, we've seen what AJ Myers has done around Newcastle last year at the end of USPKS and at the end of the Pro Tour. He was super quick, always one of the drivers to watch. And when you think about Newcastle Motorsports Park, you definitely think about AJ Myers, because he's a driver who's lapped around this place since he was so young. So he's definitely, for me, he's definitely the favorite this weekend.
Yeah, AJ Myers, certainly you would be foolish to bet against him, at least to run up at the front of the field, just understanding how good he's been at this track and understanding the amount of laps he has, as well as just being one of the best shifter drivers in the nation. A couple other names that I think might go under the radar that I feel like are good shouts at Newcastle. One of which, Annie Rule, the 2022 King of the Castle pole sitter, almost had it renamed Queen of the Castle after that one, but she was all the way up at the front of the field and really was competitive. Last year, maybe not quite as good as she would have wanted to, but certainly figures to be up towards the front of the field. Another one as well, Charlie Steins. I mean, we saw in Charlotte kind of up towards the middle of the pack, and we saw in Orlando as well, making Super Pole in the inaugural Pro Showdown at Scusa. But I think when you look at what he's done so far this year, as well as being a guy with a lot of laps around Newcastle, kind of a Newcastle or at least a Ohio, Indiana local driver, I think that favors into Charlie Steins a little bit more. A couple other guys that I want to be careful about, the JMF karting boys, Josh Conker and Billy Musgrave. We mentioned their struggles in round 1 with the DNF for both of them. I was told afterwards, don't pick Josh to finish in the top 3 because it was a bad luck charm for them. So I'm not, since we're not doing any official predictions, I will not do that. But I do think that this is a track, again, Josh Conker has experience on. Billy Musgrave last year was very competitive at Newcastle at the end of Pro Tour. And I think that this kind of plays into what their operation will do. Again, kind of the early stages of it, when you kind of see them building up a team to this sort of a lot of young drivers, a lot of talented drivers from Canada behind the wheels of those JMF Motorsports guys. But I think that they're going to be exciting to watch here as well. So I think Rule, Charlie Steins, the JMF boys. I'll also say Nathan Nicholson as well. A return to the shifter seat after what we've seen him do in recent years, both on the car side of things with the MX-5 stuff, as well as in karts running a lot of the Stars races in recent memory. So there's a lot of storylines in this pro shifter field. But before we go off to our final segment, Alex, I want to talk about sort of how you expect this place to race in a shifter, because we've seen a lot of good battles over the years. And we've also seen that out of all the tracks, Newcastle is one that's exciting to race on. But when you get set to go for watching this shifter race, how do you expect it to play out over the course of the weekend?
Oh, it'll be tough, right? Because with the pro show format, limited practice, obviously it's a little more spread out, but still just limited practice time, qualifying format, and then to obviously the races. To me, it's one of the best shifter tracks that we go to. You have the tight corners, you have dive bomb opportunities, but you have long straights. And the draft is usually not. You don't really see drivers tucking in their seat in a shifter unless you're Danny Formal. But you're going to see it here in Newcastle. You see it quite often throughout the years. Drivers starting to actually utilize a bit of the aero, tuck in their seat, try to get as much straightaway shoot as possible, because there are a couple long straightaways around this place, and it allows for passing opportunities that you wouldn't normally see in a shifter, because in other tracks, you can see drivers that they get the setup right, and if they're driving, properly, they can sort of pull away around here. Aero wash is a factor. It's bigger in the OKN side because in the shifter throughout the corners you're slowing down a little more, but it's still in the last couple of corners where it's just quick lift, maybe a downshift or two, not even two, one downshift, quick lift. You'll still see a bit of aero wash. I think you're going to see some drivers struggle to get onto the main straightaway if you're behind somebody. So that'll be a factor something to look out for. You're going to see drivers going to be backing up the corner more than they would in other corners. So I think that'll be a factor as well. But besides that, there's many drivers that we mentioned already on this segment that have a lot of laps on this place. And majority have. AJ, Jay Irwin, right? Andy Rule, Yockel, got his big break here a couple years ago. So I think that's going to play into effect. I think it's similar to what you see at a place like Trackhouse, where so many drivers have laps around that place to where it's a very tight field. It's similar here in Newcastle. A lot of drivers have so many laps around there. It's going to come out the setup. It's really going to put a lot of emphasis on that qualifying position. You can't really afford to qualify in the back behind drivers who have a lot of laps on this place, know where to defend, know how to run this place, and know kind of what setup they're going to be on. So that's another thing that we haven't talked about really. In Charlotte, the setup was blind. Here in Newcastle, you go into it with a decent idea of what you're going to do for setup, right? Maybe a few tweaks here and there. Obviously, a layout that we don't run as often, but still a layout that most drivers have run before. And so maybe a tweak or two throughout the practices, but it's really going to put emphasis on that qualifying. And then from there, I think we're going to see some tight racing in shifter for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing before we end off this segment is something that I think is very critical to talk about in the shifter category is tire wear, because you have a very long race in the final. I think that plays a part, and certainly Newcastle wears the tires, especially the rear tires and the traction zones, more than a lot of other tracks will throughout the calendar, especially this layout. I think you see more tire fall off with this reverse with the shark fin layout than any other layout that they run in Newcastle, save for the Super Mile, which maybe we'll see at some point. Again, I want to see it personally, the ski jump corner, but that's another tangent for another day. But regardless, the tire wear and the tire fall off will be a factor in shifter. And I think that's one of the things that in round one, Jay Irwin really got well, is throughout the two heat races, he never really fell off. He was able to run consistent lap times. He even ran on used tires in one of the warm-ups and was still ultra competitive. So Irwin on used tires seemed to find a little bit more of pace advantage compared to what we saw earlier on newer tires. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to this track as well. I think if anything, this track is probably a little bit harder on the tires than what we saw in Charlotte, just because what you lack in terms, or what you gain in terms of the tires getting a chance to cool off, you lose a little bit when it comes to the overall amount of traction zones and rear degradation that you're going to get. So I think that's an area where, and also the surface is a little bit rougher and a little bit harder on the tires than the smooth surface that just recently got repaved in Charlotte. So that was kind of the main thing on tire wear that I think is going to be a critical thing to watch in the shifter side of things. But we'll see how this plays out. Should be a lot of fun this weekend with a lot of competitive entries. And we've talked about pretty much half the grid at this point. There's other guys that haven't even, I think, that aren't officially on the entry list, I think could still be a factor as well. Gavin Bailiff, one to mention as well. And then there's other guys down the list as well that I expect should factor in some way, shape, or form. But that is the shifter side of things. We're going to talk about some of our bold predictions and wrap up this episode, the preview of King of the Castle next. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
Colin, I need a new 219 chain. I need a 77 tooth roof sprocket. I need some more chain lube, and I need it probably as soon as like tomorrow. Dude, are you even listening? Like, we need this to run this weekend.
Want anything else?
What do you mean?
I already got it in the car on Acceleration Kart Racing's online store, bro. All orders over $200 get free shipping.
Oh, throw in a set of tires.
Done.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free on orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Shop AKR.com.
We are so back here for episode number 12 of KC Grid Talk, powered by shopakr.com, where you can get all of your karting needs to get your kart on the track. And one guy that we will not see on the track this weekend in Pro Shifter, unless you want to make it your bold prediction, Kaleb, is Kaleb Vieska. I mean, I understand your dad here wants to see you in a shifter, but having raced against you in rentals today, I don't think that's the smartest idea.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I did a couple of laps in a Rotax earlier this week, and definitely not fit enough to hold the G forces or the speed even in a I guess even in a shifter right now, right? So. Yeah, as much as my dad wants to see me move up from 206, not going to happen yet. Just a little too expensive, and yeah, definitely not something I'd do. And I'm not part of my bold predictions, but I know we definitely have some. So Emory, I guess we'll start with you for this.
Man, put me on the spot right away. Well, round one, I had a chance to talk to Jay Irwin and his dad after round number 1 of the championship, and I was obviously extremely impressed with what Jay was able to do. And he told me, he was like, I listened to you on the podcast, and you had great rationale behind picking AJ Myers, and we thought you were right. Jay thought that you were right. It turns out Alex is right. Alex understands that Jay Irwin is a dog when it comes to racing shifter, and he was able to put up one of the most dominant performances that we've seen in the U.S. on the shifter side of things in recent memory. So as far as bold predictions go, I'm going to go back to where I got it wrong in round number 1, and I'm going to make sure I'm not wrong again. The thing is pretty simple. I'm going to say Jay Irwin goes back to back. I think that on a track that you have seen a lot of guys in the field have more experience than him on, or have more experience racing it than he does. On a track that's one of AJ Myers' strongest tracks, and one that a lot of teams have a lot of data on, and is probably one of the most even tracks when it comes to the setup on the shifter side of things. I think Jay Irwin still finds a way, man. I mean, what he did in Charlotte, what he was able to do consistently session after session, his first time at the track, and really, to be honest, the first time that we've seen him drive a track like that in the U.S., it was extremely impressive, and I think that it speaks to the preparation that he's done over in New Zealand. It speaks to the preparation of the PLC, or do I say PLC? Yes, that was really weird. PSL. Yeah. The PSL guys were able to do in round number 1. I think it's super impressive. Their preparation, Jay's preparation, and I think as much as round 1 was a coming out party for Jay Irwin, I think round number 2 is going to be him establishing his dominance and continuing it on the shifter side of things, Kaleb. So now, aside from your own expenditure into the shifter side of things this week, and what else do you have on your bold prediction list?
I'll start from top to bottom. Number 5, obviously we don't have the full entry list yet, because we obviously can't get it on Alpha Live timing that Stars uses. So last week I remember we literally showed up to the track and started seeing all the drivers who were actually going to race, and we're like, dude, all of our predictions from the episode before just went all completely out of the window, and none of them mattered because Billy showed up last minute, a bunch of other guys showed up last minute. So definitely something to look out for. So obviously not solidified, but from what I do have in front of me, at number 5, I'm expecting to see Talon Yockel crack into the top 5. I think he's going to be a little bit off of the top 4 that I have in mind here. So I have Talon Yockel, P5. I have Michael Riccio going P4. He looks very strong with the second year in the Magic Kart team, and I think he's going to be strong here this weekend. So I'll put Riccio up in P4. I'm already kind of. I'll have a tie for P4. I'll definitely throw Billy Musgrave in the top four, top five. There's too many to choose from, but Billy Musgrave definitely has to be in my top five as well with Talon Yockel. Billy was so quick here last year at Pro Tour, and I really think he's going to be quick here again this weekend. So I think Billy's going to be up there. At number 3, I think I really doubted him last time, put him further in my top 5, or I can't remember even if I put him in my top 5, but Justin White. I think he truly showed his pace at Charlotte, being a contender all weekend long. So Justin White, I have him going P3. And it's going to be a slugfest from P3 on back, because I can see a very intense battle from start to finish. I think the Burrell Art machine is going to be super quick at the beginning of the race, but I think in the end, AJ Myers is definitely going to come out with the win, and I have AJ Myers winning here this weekend at Newcastle Motorsports Park, and I have J. Irwin P2.
I see. Well, that was a lot of bold predictions.
Okay.
I was gonna say. I mean, I thought this was the bold prediction segment.
Oh my gosh!
Emory,
you guys, hold on. Paulie Massimino and Brandon Jarsacrack are right next to me right now. This is absolutely mad.
Elite content.
They're right next to me right now as we are live. So these guys are driving Indiana as well, but that's insane. Paulie Massimino and Brandon Jarsacrack headed that way too, so that's crazy to see. But yeah, good to see those guys.
All right, Kaleb, where do you have them finishing this weekend?
Brandon Jarsacrack not racing, but Paulie Massimino, I don't know. He was giving me a peace sign, and he also gave me a thumbs up. So we'll see. We'll see what Paulie does. He seemed pretty nice here on the road. So, but yeah, I have Paulie finishing in the top 5. No doubt for Paulie. And I have to think about my OKN predictions a little bit more here.
These are some incredible bold predictions from both of you guys. We have Emory saying that the winner by 10 seconds of Charlotte's going to win again. And we have Kaleb saying that AJ Myers
I have not forgotten you guys. I have not forgotten about you guys clowning me after 2 weeks ago, my bold predictions.
No, but that's a like 2 weeks ago you got upset at us for saying obvious ones, and then you guys are both over here.
I explained why it would be bold, okay? All right. So Alex, anyways, Mr. Guy in front of a food truck, give me your bold prediction for this weekend.
It's hard to be bold for sure. So I will give you guys a break on that one. It's hard to be bold when you can't bet against Jay, you can't bet against AJ in the shifter class, and you really can't bet against Paulie, Diego, all those guys. I think I'll be bold for this for the segment here. I think in both AZ and in OKN, I think on pole position in shifter is gonna be Ian Quentin. I think the winner in shifter is gonna be Jay Irwin. But I think your top 3 is gonna be Jay Irwin. I'm gonna go Billy Musgrave second. And then I'm going to go with Chase Jones in third. Now, on the OKN side of things, I think pole position is going to go to Wesley Gundler. And then the winner is going to be Diego Ramos. I'm lame for that one, but Diego's going to win the race. I think Paulie finishes second, and I think Wesley holds on to a third place there in the future race.
You know what? I'm going to one-up your bold prediction on the OKN side. Since we're doing all the way through the top 3 on both, I'll go ahead and fill out my shifter podium. I think it's going to be Jay Irwin in first. I'll go with AJ Myers in second. And I'll go with another, I think, slightly bolder prediction. I think this is the weekend Andy Rule puts it together and puts it on the podium in a stacked shifter field. I'm telling you, she was really fast at Newcastle 2 years ago. She's looked fast. Really, every time we run King of the Castle with this layout, something about it just seems to fit her driving. I think alongside AJ on the Magic side of things, she'll have a really good weekend and find a way onto the podium. But on the OKN side, since we got into the podium and the bold prediction list, give me Wes Gumler to win the race. I like it. I think that Fox & Sons team have this track figured out. I think Wes has this track figured out really well. I think the racecraft, he'll have to learn a little bit on the senior side of things. He's gotten a few races under his belt at this point, between club races at Trackhouse as well as having a race at Charlotte and a couple of the Rotax races earlier on in the year in Orlando. But For me, I think this is a coming out party for Wes Scumler, much like it was for his teammate Aiden Fox last year. I think Wes Scumler comes out on top. Second position, I have Diego Ramos. I think, again, Diego, this track seems to be a second place type of deal for him. I think he finished second yet again. And then into the third spot on the Pro Star or the OKN Pro side of things, I think it's got to be one of the favorites. I'll go with Kaleb Gaffera. I think that this is another track that he's done well. I don't think he's run this exact layout since 2021, but this is still something that I'd expect Kaleb to do well in. As for Paulie, I think he'll have a very solid weekend as well inside the top 5. But even though he made a cameo on the show, I just don't quite think that it's going to be quite enough. But he'll be certainly up there. And I think that you have a lot of guys with pace and experience around Newcastle. They'll make it fun in the OK side. So, Kaleb, you've had time now to decompress. You've had time to evaluate your options when it comes to bold predictions. So tell us about what you think is going to happen in OKN.
Well, I tell you what, if Paulie Massimino drives as fast as he's driving right now later on this weekend, then I got Paulie Massimino to take the win on Sunday afternoon. I mean, he looked really, really good in the OKN package and at the start of the weekend. So I think Paulie has to be my pick. I see him and Diego going at it throughout the entire race. So I got Paulie first, Diego Ramos second. In third, I see Kaleb Gaffera getting up there as well. So I got Kaleb Gaffera third. And then P4, I'd have to do Aiden Fox. Aiden Fox, P4, and I see Brandon Carr in a fifth place here this weekend. And then to go back to the shifter one, just to make it clear, because I know you guys are saying that I listed half of the field, which might have been true. But I got AJ Myers winning, Jay Irwin second. In third, I got Justin White, Billy Musgrave P4, and then Michael Riccio P5.
This guy just predicted the top 3 in OKN to be the exact same as Charlotte. You know what? I respect it. We're a big fan of being bold here, Kaleb. I think you've done a great job of that. But hey, Paulie, he was zooming on by. I was gonna say I think that he's probably he started a good amount behind you at this point, right?
Dude, I don't understand how he even got in front of us at this point. I mean, I was already gone. He was still at the track. I guess they were loading up. And then I'm just sitting here, and Xander like starts laughing, and I look to my right, and I see Paulie Massimino just right on my window, and I'm like, all right, these guys are flying. So if he drives anything like he's driving right now, he'll definitely be quick and one to watch this weekend.
I think we gotta tell Xander to speed up the RV a little bit.
Definitely not. It's a little wet outside, and last thing I'd want right now is just to be fishtailing all the way to Newcastle, Indiana. So definitely not what we want right now.
Definitely stay safe. Do not take my advice on that one, even though it may hurt to see individuals blowing by you. I think if Paulie does that in the race weekend, he'll be happy. But I don't.
Yeah.
I think that no, I definitely think get there safe. Avoid the rain.
Yes,
I know that it's been a very hectic day on the climate side of things in Texas as well as throughout the United States. So certainly hoping this weekend. The weather looks promising. I don't want to say anything because we've had weekends in the past where it looks promising. It doesn't go well. But compared to what this past weekend's been throughout the U.S., I think that it looks promising to at least get a mostly clean final thoughts. A mostly clean weekend in. So, Alex, we finished up this episode. You've been in front of a food truck the whole time. You're not going to be in front of a food truck this weekend, but you're not going to be in Newcastle. But heading to this one, what are your final thoughts?
I mean, I'm going to be tuned in for sure. This is going to be awesome racing. I mean, we named majority of the field in OKN and Shifter for sure, but I think throughout all the classes, the Stars Shifter Series always provides incredible racing action. You don't want to miss any of it this weekend, obviously live on Kart Chasers. So for those of you watching, please tune in this weekend. Awesome racing. One of the best racetracks we go to in the country at Newcastle. So you're not going to miss anything.
You hear the arcade music in the background, really kind of driving home the point. So Alexander Searle, again, he's in Tampa, provided a great show with the background this tonight, and we'll miss him this weekend. He'll be back in the next few weeks to continue working and continue delivering his outstanding hot takes. So he's on that side of things. Kaleb, you're about an hour further down the road than when we last talked. You've been overtaken by some other
Yeah.
individuals in the karting paddock, but
Correct.
what are you feeling heading into this weekend? What's your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, super excited to get back with the whole crew. We have, I believe, 10, 11 guys total here this weekend. So excited to see everybody come back for another national event. Obviously, KC Summer getting started, kicked off, King of the Castle, first one on the list. And the KC Summer has officially begun. So that's what I'm most excited about, but also great racing. Right. So final thoughts for this episode. I mean, we had a great opening round, and I'm super excited to see what the shifters can do here this weekend, and see what the OKN guys can do as well. So definitely going to be excited for the racing, excited for all that for everything to come this weekend. And we'll throw the schedule up. Right. It's going to be 3 days of action-packed racing. We got the pro show a couple of times. We start not bright and early. We start with qualifying at 4:10 p.m. Eastern, and we'll move that overlay for you guys here real quick so you guys can get a good look. So we have all starts Friday, 4:10 p.m. Eastern with qualifying, and then we go into the pro show at 5:50, and then Saturday. Obviously, all of Friday is going to be free, and then warm-up sessions are going to be free. We're bright and early, up and live at 7:30 a.m. Eastern, and then we go into the heats for your semi-pro categories, the pre-final, and then we go right into the pro show with Moto 1 and Moto 2. And then Sunday, the warm-ups are free, and then the main events for our KC Premium members. But super excited for what's to come, and it's going to be a lot of racing, very, very long days, and I really cannot wait to go back to the Stars Championship Series here this weekend.
No, absolutely. Again, this is going to be one of the most exciting weekends that we've had all season long. 287 entries, a record, I believe, for the Stars Championship Series. They're going to need a lot of donuts.
Hey, round of applause. Round of applause. 287.
287. It's not quite 300, but I think we're getting 300 sometime by the end of this year. I think it's really impressive what Christian and Alec and the rest of the Stars Championship Series has done. I cannot wait to see what happens this year. I kind of bittersweet for me not being behind the wheel of this one after last year. I think Newcastle is one of my favorite races to run on the Stars side of things, but yeah, I think this is going to be some really good racing, and again, a lot of exciting storylines from this. We'll see what happens in the OKN side of things. We'll see what happens on the shifter side if J.R. Wynn can go back to back. And hey, other classes as well. KA again nearing capacity this weekend. That should be a very fun battle. We saw round number 1, Alan Isambard going back to back. We have the KA junior side of things, which is going to be extremely fun to watch. Again, that class being very, very tight all season long, with Enzo Vidmontien dominating recently. We have his dad, Jonas, in the chat here. At least we have a turn cutting one of the straights. I think that's a good point about this track. It's not quite as draft dependent as the normal Newcastle layout is, and I think that provides a lot of good racing. It might not make as much of a Talladega style race as what other layouts will have, but on the flip side, I think you get a lot of technical racecraft that comes into play, and you still have the draft effect through the long front straightaway. So again, KA Junior should be a fun race to watch. I'm expecting OKNJ to be another exciting barn burner as well, understanding now those guys have another full weekend under their belts. This heading into this weekend with some new experience, new exposure on the engine package. I think that'll be fun, as well as the micros, the minis, and the rest of your fields here in the second round of the Stars Championship Series. It's King of the Castle, always puts on a show. I think we're set for 3 exciting days of racing this week, and you can catch it all again on Car Chaser. Like we mentioned, live from the start of qualifying on Friday up through the rest of the weekend. We'll have free warm-up coverage, free qualifying coverage, and the rest will be behind our KC Premium wall that you can subscribe to watch all of your action and all of your favorite drivers this weekend. So a lot to look forward to, a lot that's been discussed tonight. I'm thrilled to get set to go here in just a couple of days up to Indiana. So from myself, Kaleb Viesca, who's currently en route in the KCRV, Alexander Stroll, who will not be with us, but will still be able to provide great insight and analysis as always. And from the couple of guys who made guest appearances, Paulie Massimino, Brendan Jarskrak, Xander Coleman driving the RV, and the rest of the moving show that makes our Kart Chaser coverage continue to grow. This has been episode number 12 of Grid Talk, and we'll be back next week to talk about the summary of King of the Castle, which will be a barn burner this weekend. So once again, it's been another episode of Grid Talk, and we will see you next time.